Welcome to Blogs and Articles. In this series, we look at blog posts, articles online, and news stories about love, marriage, dating, and relationships. I'll provide some coaching questions for exploration, as I would for a client who is in this situation. Then finally, I'll provide my commentary at the end of just me being myself, unfiltered and unadulterated. Hi, I'm Janelle, the relationship coach behind The Successful Invisible. I help professional Black women who are 35 plus date and partner with more self awareness and intentionality. Check out the links in the description box below to sign up for my next 5-day self awareness and dating challenge. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Continuing on with something I think is very important for anyone who watches my channel to understand in order to date intentionally is to understand signs of abuse when you see them or experience them. And a lot of times from working with my coaching clients, talking to peers, kikiing with my girlfriends, etc., I've learned that a lot of women don't understand what the signs of abuse are. So I saw this article on Pop Sugar and I thought it would be very useful. So let's jump in. So sleep deprivation is the subtle abuse tactic you didn't expect. Having trouble falling or staying asleep is pretty common. In fact, it's estimated to affect more than 50 million people in the United States. But if ongoing sleep issues stem from a manipulative partner and you're chronically exhausted, pay attention to that word because I think a lot of people can relate to that. You may be experiencing sleep deprivation as a subtle abuse tactic. Unlike other forms of abuse, sleep deprivation can be easy to overlook, says Deborah Gilman, PhD, a licensed psychologist who specializes in adult and families impacted by trauma. In these cases, sleep deprivation is being used as a form of control and manipulation within the intimate relationship, she says. The abusers disregard their partner's need for rest and use disruption in sleep patterns to assert dominance. It is a control tactic to assert dominance. Pay attention to that. Laura, whose name has been changed at the request of the interviewee, was aware of her partner inflicted sleep deprivation for years. Her husband's late night disruptions became routine, and she became accustomed to getting only 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. I came from a really happy upbringing with rose colored glasses, but when I got married, I found myself in this web of doing everything because it was expected of me. She says, I can't tell you how many times I would go to sleep and my husband would wake me up at 4 a.m. because he couldn't find his wallet or keys or needed me to do laundry because he needed clean socks or underwear. Sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic has also been bubbling up on TikTok, sparking conversations with people who've dealt with it, as well as mental health professionals who spotted it in clients. Abuse and coercive control can be found in all relationships, and abusers can be women or men and can occur in same sex or non romantic types of relationships, says Victoria Lattice. Lattices, sorry for butchering that, PhD, a licensed clinical psychologist and trauma specialist. Abuse happens on a spectrum. Abuse happens on a spectrum, folks. I love that quote. Ahead, Pop Sugar talked with experts to break down what you need to know about sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic, including what it looks like, how to spot the signs, and when to seek help. So, what is sleep deprivation? As the name implies, sleep deprivation occurs when you aren't sleeping enough or when you aren't getting good quality sleep, according to the Cleveland Clinic. Enough sleep is subjective, but most adults consistently need at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Typical signs of sleep deprivation include daytime drowsiness, repeated yawning, reduced cognitive function, mood and memory impairment, and visual sensitivity, adds Michelle Rose, PhD, a clinical mental health professional at University of Western States. After all, sleep is regenerative and allows for optimal brain and bodily functions, says Dr. Rose. Good sleep reduces the likelihood of heart disease and high blood pressure, mood disorders, and visual discomfort, and is correlated with healthier romantic partnerships, improved social and career functioning, and familial relationships. She explains adequate sleep also reduces stress, boosts mental sharpness and problem solving abilities, and supports mood regulation, Dr. Gilman adds. So, how is sleep deprivation an abuse tactic? So, abuse occurs when relationship conflict is managed with physical or psychological aggression, Dr. Rose says. To get more specific, subtle abuse tactics are manipulative behaviors that are often covert and disguised within seemingly normal interactions. Dr. Gilman adds, these tactics are used to control, manipulate, or undermine someone's confidence, sense of self worth, or independence, she explains. Unlike physical abuse, the effects of sleep deprivation may not manifest as visible bruises or injuries, making it less conspicuous and therefore easier to dismiss, says Dr. Gilman. Sleep deprivation is a form of subtle abuse when it's employed as a means of control or manipulation within a relationship, and abusers may employ subtle tactics to disrupt sleep without overtly acknowledging their intentions. She explains the repercussions of sleep deprivation accumulate over time, and the more you're deprived of sleep, the more significant the toll it can take on your life. Think of sleep deprivation as kind of like a drop of water dripping on rocks. That's how the Grand Canyon was formed in the United States over thousands of years, of course. But it came from just trickling water. It came from water. Water is a very powerful element in nature, whether we see it in its grandiose view as, megastorms, tsunamis, hurricanes, etc., or even just a trickle, stream, droplets. Over time, it can have a significant impact, right? That's what sleep deprivation. It's just the drop, 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 drop of water. And if you stay with someone who does this for years, imagine the harm it can do. Back to the article. Laura says these long term effects firsthand, saw these long term effects firsthand when at 45 she found herself in the hospital thinking she was having a heart attack. The doctors realized her blood pressure was through the roof due to stress and a severe lack of sleep. I wasn't going to bed until 2 a.m., and I was definitely up by 6 a.m. And what happened between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. wasn't always sleep, she tells Pop Sugar. What does sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic look like? Sleep deprivation can take a variety of forms, but the following scenarios are common abuse tactics that may camouflage into regular interactions, according to Gilman. The deceptive routine. At first glance, late night conversations or activities might seem innocuous, but these habitual late nights can slowly morph into a tool for control, disrupting the natural sleep cycle, explains Dr. Gilman. The nocturnal disturbances. It's normal for screens to creep into the bedroom, but Dr. Gilman says constant scrolling through a phone or laptop or turning on the light can become disruptive, ultimately hindering the tranquility necessary for a restful night. This can also include behaviors like intentionally tossing and turning or aggressively pulling off the covers. Dr. Rose adds. The emotional entanglement. If conversations take a turn and constantly veer into emotionally charged territory as bedtime approaches, this is a red flag, Dr. Gilman says. What seems like heartfelt discussions can be a guise for coercion, making it difficult to disengage and rest, she explains. This also includes your partner demanding a resolution or agreement prior to you going to sleep, Dr. Rose adds. The guilt trips. Phrases like, if you loved me, you'd stay up a little longer, can display coercion, Dr. Gilman notes. Such subtle guilt trips manipulate the partner into sacrificing their sleep for the sake of the relationship, she explains. The intrusive monitoring. If your partner is constantly checking in or monitoring you during the night, these frequent awakenings can create an atmosphere of vigilance, which leads to disrupted sleep patterns, Dr. Gilman says. The noisy intrusions. Whether it is in the bedroom or an entirely different floor, activities like cleaning, putting away dishes, or engaging in noisy hobbies late at night disrupt the peace necessary for quality sleep, says Dr. Gilman. How to spot the signs of sleep deprivation. Recognizing sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic can be difficult, but remember that it typically involves behavioral patterns and a shift in sleep routine within a relationship. Dr. Gilman says it's more than just an occasional disruption. There is a consistent pattern of sleep interference aimed at exerting control or manipulation, she explains. Here are common signs that someone might be using sleep deprivation as a form of abuse, according to Dr. Gilman. Consistent interference. Your partner consistently interrupts or prevents you from sleeping by making noise, keeping you awake, or waking you up intentionally. Gaslighting about sleep. Your partner blames your fatigue or emotional response on your lack of sleep, causing confusion or making you doubt your own experience. Control of sleep schedule. Your partner dictates or controls when you can sleep, imposing strict rules or limitations on bedtime routines. Dismissal of sleep needs. Your partner belittles or dismisses the importance of your sleep needs and undermines your request for adequate rest. Manipulative justification. Your partner uses justifications like, it's for your own good, or I need you to do this for us to justify their interference with your sleep. What to do if you experience sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic. If you suspect your partner is utilizing sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic, trust your gut, stresses Dr. Rose. Ladies, segue. This is important. Oftentimes, from working with clients, my own lived experiences and friends from present and past, they will dismiss something that they know is wrong in their relationship or their interaction with someone because they don't want to believe this person that they care about, love, etc., would do something like that to them. Do not dismiss your gut. If you feel this is going on, it is, okay? And it is time for you to address it. You may not be able to address it or not feel safe addressing it head on by confronting the person. If that's the case, you absolutely need to safely make your way out of this partnership. Back to the article. If you're unsure, keep a private log of the occurrences and include a timeline of the behavior, she says. Then reach out to a therapist, counselor, or mental health professional who specializes in relationship dynamics and abuse, Dr. Gilman adds. From there, they can provide guidance, support, and resources tailored to your situation. Also, another segue. If sleep deprivation is one of the tactics being used as abuse in your relationship, as a place to start, also look online for domestic violence websites. Many times they have resources there that can help you, that may be able to get you out of an unsafe situation, especially if you're in a living situation with this person. All right. If you feel safe, try communicating your need for adequate sleep with your partner, says Dr. Gilman. Before the conversation, reflect on your feelings and what specific behaviors concern you, and establish clear boundaries that you want to communicate to your partner, she explains. Express your feelings and experiences using I statements to avoid sounding accusatory. She adds, for example, I feel upset when, instead of you always. Creating stronger boundaries was crucial for Laura's mental health, which includes sleeping in an entirely separate room. Going to my room is not a punishment, and I create peace in my space, she explains. That being said, these solutions may not work for every relationship. If your partner is dismissive and or refuses to acknowledge your behavior or your boundaries, assess the possibility of leaving the relationship. If the situation doesn't improve or your safety is at risk, Dr. Gilman says you can also contact the crisis text line for immediate support and guidance. Dr. Latifsees adds, lastly, if you are in physical or sexual danger or your partner is hurting or scaring you, Dr. Latifsees, I keep butchering that name, I know y'all, says to call 911 or the 24-hour National Domestic Hotline. The bottom line, sleep deprivation, when used as a tool for coercion, is an infringement on basic human rights and is a subtle form of abuse that requires attention and understanding, Dr. Yeoman says. Shedding light on these covert tactics empowers individuals to identify and address such behavior, fostering healthier relationships grounded in respect and empathy. All right, now let's jump into some coaching questions that I often ask or would ask in a session with a client who was going through anything similar to the article that I just read. So grab a fresh pen and a notebook and answer these coaching questions truthfully and fully in order to kind of go deeper on your own journey to greater self awareness when it comes to dating and relationships. And as you know, first relationship, of course, that we need to get healthy around is a relationship with ourselves. So let's jump into these questions for reflection. Question 1. What are the subtle signs that sleep is being manipulated by someone else? Now, reading through this article, one of the things that popped up for me, and it even said that, is this specific type of abuse. All abuse actually exists on a spectrum. But I believe and have seen that sleep deprivation is a form of abuse oftentimes people grow up with. it can be inflicted by parents, especially if you're a little more seasoned, a little older. You may have grown up in a household where your parents didn't allow you to sleep in on a day off or on a weekend. They considered kids getting rest as lazy. And many of us grew up with that. Thankfully, I did not have parents like that. They liked to keep us busy, but when we were tired and we needed to sleep in like on a weekend or something, they did allow it. But I definitely have friends and acquaintances who grew up in households, if they weren't working or at school, like working in the house, working at a job, or at school, they really were not allowed to have time to themselves. So oftentimes I would say sleep deprivation, because it is so subtle and older generations didn't see it as abuse, but there's a lot of things older generations didn't see as abuse. This may be something that women and men, but I think especially women who are experiencing this, this may have been an issue that you experienced in childhood, and something you experience now with a partner. So subtle signs are people just don't want you to sleep in. You can also see this in entitled friends. If friends in air quotes, if you have people who always want you around when they want you around, but they're never there for you, they always want to capitalize on your time or your empathy or your money or whatever, and you be there for them. One of the things that they might do is also try to capitalize and manipulate you into, not getting sleep when you need to. They kind of coerce you or guilt trip you to go out when you don't want to. This one is a big one because it can come at someone from so many different angles and in so many different relationships. So I really implore you to sit down and think about the people that are in your close personal association on a regular basis, whether that's parents, whether that's siblings, whether that's nieces and nephews, whether that's friends, whether that's romantic partners, and see who really gets bothered when you are trying to rest. Now, I want to make this clear. This isn't if you are maybe going through a depression or anxiety or something that looks like that, and you have people who care about you who are trying to help you, or they think they're trying to help you at least. If that's the case and you may feel that they're doing that, that is grounds for a discussion with them, because you two may be seeing two different things. You may say, hey, I just need rest, where they're saying, no, you're sleeping all the time. We think this is a precursor to something bigger. So once again, communication, clear communication can get to the root of this. But some of the subtle signs, just think about some of the subtle signs and the people in your life who may move in certain ways to try to manipulate you about your sleep. Guilt tripping is one of the biggest things I can think of across the board, no matter the relationship, that another human may try to employ to manipulate you about your sleep. Question 2: how does sleep deprivation affect daily functioning and mental clarity? Easy answer: you are in a fog. You can't think clearly. And many times you'll probably have a pretty, at least a dull headache or some type of pain where your eyes hurt, your eye muscles hurt, your head hurts, you're foggy. You may even have signs that reflect being sick or illness, such as some type of congestion. The lack of sleep and adequate rest affects all of us in different ways, but throughout our lifetimes as adults, we've all been there where, for work or school or something like that, or taking care of someone sick, we have experienced sleep deprivation, but we also understood that it wasn't going to go on forever. Even if it was for an extended, uncomfortable period of time, there usually was an end in sight, and the reason we were going through that period of sleep deprivation. But really think about, if you're not, you know, cramming for a test, or taking care of someone sick where it's touch and go, or some type of particular thing that's going on, and you're just experiencing this all the time, these symptoms especially all the time in a particular relationship, whether it's familial, romantic, friendship, doesn't matter. Take note of that. That is likely a person or persons that need to have restricted access to you. If you have people pleasing tendencies, this may be hard for you to really recognize and then assert boundaries, and that's okay. Working with a coach can absolutely help you do that. And if it's a deeper issue, working with a therapist can help you do that. But Think about how sleep deprivation and where it's coming from in your life today. Pen and paper is the easiest way to really hash everything out on paper so you understand what's going on. Your sleep is important. Sleep can rejuvenate you, it's necessary for the human body. So if you're not getting enough, be mindful of that. Question 3. In what ways might a partner justify interrupting sleep, and how do these justifications serve to manipulate or control? So, I have seen this the most in my friendship groups through the years where they have a partner who is very needy. And it's more weaponized incompetence type of needy, not they actually need something. So, for example, in two ways actually. So the first one that I've seen it a lot has been their partner can't do anything without them being, up at the same time they're up, to do this, to find their keys, to, make sure they have they can't find their shirt for work, whatever. I've seen it that way. The other way I've seen it is when a friend or a client has had a partner who does not want them to sleep in just because, especially on weekends. I think the most notable time for this is on weekends where, say he's an early riser, just like all the time. It's usually men to women. It can be the other way around. Take what applies. But let's say he's an early riser and he likes to get up at 7:30, 8 a.m. at the latest on the weekends. But they both work, even if they don't both work. But she wants to sleep, let's say, until 10. He will wake her up just because saying, well, they should be up at the same time for quality time. And then usually it's an excuse. They usually won't just say, I think you should be up as well. Sometimes they're enough of a jerk to say that. And in that case, it should be very easy for, the partner who's being told that to let them go. But a lot of times they'll just, the person doing the abusing is going to say, oh, we could spend quality time. There's no quality time. Your partner is tired and ragged and not fully lucid, and it's their time to rest, because many times this happens. This partner has a busy week, whether they're a stay-at-home partner or they work a 9 to 5 job. It's insidious, it's purposeful, and it's meant to harm. And that's the part that I need people who are really questioning things about their relationships or things they see in the relationship of a person they care about. It's intentionally harmful. That person who is enacting this behavior on their partner is not doing it on accident. So they will usually justify it by saying it's a way to spend quality time, or they will throw in weaponized incompetence with it to then say, oh, I needed you up to help me find my keys or help me find this. So be mindful of this behavior. It's intentional, and they're doing it to gain control over you. So just think about what their end goal is and know that it's intentional and on purpose. There is no accident in it. And that should hopefully help you along in realizing this is not a person who genuinely cares for you or wants what's best for you. And it's probably best to get rid of them. Question 4. How can sleep needs be effectively communicated to a partner who disrupts sleep? I'm a very straightforward person myself, and I have not experienced this in relationships, but because I believe in addressing things in the moment. But if you are in this situation, definitely write down instances and times, because having very specific targeted feedback when you are addressing an issue is the best way for people to see, oh, you're exaggerating. No, I'm actually talking about very specific events. Now, they may try to gaslight you. They may try to distract you from, use Darvo. They may try to deny and then go on the attack that you're keeping score on something. No, I want to have a very targeted conversation to address an issue. This is where you need to be assertive. If you don't have the type of partner you can have these conversations with, we are grown over here. You're with the wrong partner. Okay? If you can't have real conversations and discussions about the things that are negatively impacting you in a relationship, you are not in a healthy relationship. That person wants you to suffer in silence. And I need that to sink in for anyone who's listening and doesn't believe they can have this discussion because of the way their partner will react. They want you to suffer. It is intentional, and they want you to suffer in silence. But anyway, you can The best way is to have targeted examples. I would say 3 to 5 just to start, and start with I statements. The article referenced that instead of saying you statements, because we're not trying to go for an accusatory tone here. We're trying to center the problem in the discussion and not make it a you versus me, a dynamic in the discussion. So when you going about your targeted examples or going through them, you can say, I felt on this date when this happened, when I was woken up at 4 a.m. to help find house keys, I felt that my sleep was not being valued. Do you see how that statement, goes? It's talking about the problem and how the person feels. So if you are with a mature partner who is actually overlooking it, side note, I don't think that's the case most time, they can understand and hear what you're saying. You are talking about you and the problem. Even if they are the ones who woke you up at 4 a.m., you didn't say you woke me up at 4 a.m. You see what I mean? It's the way you phrase the things, because I feel you can have a more fruitful conversation that way, um, and see what comes out of it. Take note, if you do decide to take this approach and it doesn't seem to come to any healthy resolution, and there's all these smoke and mirrors, I like to call, that they throw up and get defensive about it, you have your answer right there about how much A, they know what they're doing, B, they take offense to you standing up for yourself about your sleep. They're saying the quiet part out loud. Question 5. What steps can be taken if sleep deprivation is recognized as a tactic being used against someone? I would say this is going to differ for everyone's relationship if you are experiencing this. Because if your answer was to the last question, you didn't even feel you could approach your partner about this and have a fruitful discussion and come to some type of healthy resolution, you already know you are likely in an abusive relationship, even if they've never hit you. And you need to move in a very mindful and safe way. I highly recommend you go to domestic violence websites. I've left the links to the article that I read from below, and within that article, there are quite a few links to crisis hotlines, etc. I will also include those links in the description box, because I think it's important when people have that aha moment that they have some type of viable options for the next steps to then get into a safe space immediately available to them. So I will leave the links below, as I stated in the box, to abuses and crisis centers and hotlines these are the same ones that are in the article. Because if you don't think you can have this discussion, you already know in your heart of hearts you are in a relationship that's likely not safe for you to be in, and they're not going to react well, i.e., and or can react negatively up to and including violently about their behavior being brought up in the context of it affecting you or impacting you negatively. So, to me, the steps that can be taken if this is recognized as a tactic of abuse is to get out and follow the guidance of, and if you have friends or family that can help you out of this type of situation, who are safe spaces, who aren't going to alert the abuser that you're trying to leave or get away from them, but who are truly safe spaces, and use your judgment on that, trust your gut. Use your resources that are immediately available, and use the resources below that talk about domestic violence hotlines. Someone never has to hit you in order for a relationship to be abusive. Remember that. Let's jump into one of my favorite parts of any of my blogs and article videos. And here I want to offer just my thoughts on what we've just read, how I see it translating in, my coaching and the wonderful people I coach with, and just any broader concepts that come up. Just my thoughts. My thoughts on this article were that there was a lot of information given and some very practical examples that people can look out for when they are experiencing sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic. Like I said, I have my doubts if it's ever on accident or a mistake or they didn't mean to. I don't believe that 9 times out of 10. Once again, with the age of myself and my friends and the demographics of the wonderful women I work with, we are grown. And most of the people that they're dating are on the same level of them in terms of education and income. So we're not talking about, an 18 or 20-year-old, even a 25-year-old, and people just being young before their brains have fully formed yet and they're in relationships. I can somewhat have grace for that when you're talking about younger people in, romantic relationships, because you're still trying to figure out, left from right. But when you are grown and you're experiencing these things, to me, I'm very hard pressed to not feel it's completely intentional all of the time. To me, when the person who is being abusive in this way is called out, they're they're just going to lean into Darvo. They're just going to go into like denying it and trying to flip the script and then attacking you for even bringing it up, because it's a mindset of entitlement that they are entitled to treat you in this manner. And it's one of those really subtle things that can be observed early, because it's all about gaining control and coercion. And I just want to go back over some of the, signs. Before you even get in a relationship, I think you can see some of these signs in your interaction with the person. A person who's always trying to guilt trip you to do the things that they want you to do, even though you tell them maybe this is in the dating phases. So I think this is a great article to apply and really see through a lens in a different way, because this is specifically talking about like when people are in relationships with others. But you can recognize this stuff early before you even get that deep in. Someone who's constantly guilt tripping you, if they're monitoring what you're doing, if when you do get to a point where folks are staying over, one another's homes, etc., or places where they live, they're not respectful of your sleep, they're being noisy, they're waking you up to do stuff. Like, recognize this stuff very early on and understand that they're already showing that they're not a safe person to be in a relationship with. They are already trying to exert the control. They are already trying to coerce. Guilt trips, I think, is the biggest and quickest one that pops up pretty quickly, especially when you have in heterosexual relationships, because guilt trips seem to be something I have observed in my own experience and with working with clients that men will often do to women very early on, and almost as like it's second nature to them. Not all men, of course, but the men who engage in these abusive tactics, they know what they're doing. I'm going to reiterate that so I'm blue in the face. They know what they're doing. It's never by accident. The safest way to interact in relationships is when someone does some of these things, take it as intentional. You can have the discussions. I definitely think it's fair to give someone the chance and really lay out what's happened. But I believe it's intentional. We're too damn old for people to be doing silly, inconsiderate, rude things. It could be, but to me, like I said, my experience as well, personal life, as well as working with clients, as well as things I've observed, it's usually not. And we always want to give, I would say I see this the most in women, we always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. That's likely a lot to do with socialization and just more in touch with our empathy overall as a society, as a collective. That's not an individual woman thing. Some women could give a shit and will absolutely cut a man off if he doesn't honor and respect, especially her sleep, her time, etc. That's not a bad thing. But I would say for the most part, I've seen that we always want to give people the benefit of the doubt, women as a collective, okay? And if we're seeing behaviors that we know on a conscious level, A plus B does not equal C, or they're not the way we would interact with someone else, we want to dismiss those behaviors, okay? Not all women, of course, like I said, women as a collective. So when you see it, actually keeping notes, that notepad idea in the article, I think was great. Don't wait till you're in a relationship. Start doing things like that early on when in the dating phases. Start, the easy way, if you are a person that likes to journal, do it that way. If you are a person who just likes to record their thoughts, we all have voice notes apps I don't care if you have Android, Apple, it doesn't matter. We all have voice notes apps on our phones. Just take little voice notes. Just take little voice notes when things, and then, you know, save them somewhere safe, of course, save them somewhere private, and just go through, and you will start to notice patterns. Even if you don't recognize it in the moment, you'll have all of these points of reference to go back to, that where you had questions about the person's behavior, about what they did, etc., about a guilt trip, about attempted coercion, etc. Um, Definitely a big one. Another one that I really thought was so was an important one to realize, because it's so slick, because people try to do it all the time. I would say this is in any relationship where you have someone who's trying to manipulate and coerce you and get their way from you. They like to start fights. They like to start little back and forth things, especially in the evening. Okay. They want to try to do something to get you all stirred up, get your nervous system all up, get you, get you breathing heavy, get, all of those things, all those chemical reactions are going off in your body. It makes it very hard to sleep. That's intentional. They're trying to disrupt your peace intentionally. Not to say whatever they're talking about doesn't necessarily need to be addressed. It might be something that truly needs to be addressed. But the time that they pick to do it, it's intentional. The point was manipulation. The point was to have you upset. The point was to disrupt your sleep. And this is another place where you need to have boundaries around, and I'm talking about normal conversations. I'm not talking about, emergencies where it happened at the moment you need to talk about it in the moment. I'm talking about a conversation that could have waited till the next Saturday and you guys could have gone out, to brunch and talked about it, had a very calm conversation about it. I'm talking about those type of items. When they do that and try to call you and upset you and get you all riled up, it was intentional. It was absolutely intentional. Especially near bedtime, it was intentional. They're trying to disrupt your peace. So start noticing this. This sleep deprivation as an abuse tactic, when you really sit back and think about it, you may not like the answer of how many people in your life are leaning into it as a way to keep you exhausted. I would say, any ladies out there who are single parents, you may see this even more, even with your own kids, because you are Superwoman and you're doing it all. And everybody wants a pound of flesh from you. I myself do not have kids, but I've seen this a lot with friends of mine, as well as clients I've worked with who are single parents. They experience this sleep deprivation as a subtle abuse tactic from many different directions. So be mindful, even more mindful. So those are just my thoughts. Reflect on this article. Let me know your thoughts below if you've ever experienced anything like this, because I'm curious to see how many other folks can relate, because I know we all have a story. We've experienced it. We know someone who's gone through it, or it's something where we are actively observing right now in some type of relationship in our lives. Thank you for joining me today for this episode of Blogs and Articles. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Check out the links in the description box below to sign up for my next 5-day self-awareness and dating challenge. Also, check out my podcast, The Successful Invisible. Next season publishing soon on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, this is your coach, Jay Nell. Stay empowered and see you on the next article or blog post.